interiors in GTA 6? How many will the game have? Is the rumor that 70% of the buildings in game will have an interior true? And how will the amount of interiors in GTA 6 compare to the amount of interiors in previous Rockstar games? My name is Saukko, and I'm one of the people who have helped in the creation of this map, and I know a lot of things about GTA 6. So let's start by looking at the interiors in the previous games. I have counted the buildings and interiors in GTA 5 and Red Dead Redemption 2 very unscientifically. So basically subjectively deciding what counts as an interior. Basically I have calculated the amount of interiors compared to the buildings which could have interiors, and I'm excluding things like barns and warehouses, so they don't count to either one. For GTA 5 we of course have 15 clothing stores, 20 convenience stores, 7 barbers and 7 tattoo artists, 11 ammunitions, 1 strip club, 5 Los Santos customs and 6 Fleece banks. And I'm excluding things like those small garages that are on the map, metro stations, prison towers and hangars and warehouses. And of course I'm only including interiors that are part of the main map. So basically any GTA Online interior or an interior you teleport to is excluded from the calculations, because I don't think those are real interiors. And here's a map of some miscellaneous interiors and some mission interiors. And this does not mention the stores mentioned previously. And when we sum up all of the interiors, we come up with a number of 114. I have seen people claiming numbers like 121 or even 400. But I don't like those numbers. The 400 number includes like tunnels and shit, which definitely are not interiors. So 114 interiors. Well, how many buildings does GTA 5 have? Well, there is a handy website hosted and made by RLX, which actually has a list of all GTA 5 buildings and landmarks. And there is 2,300 entries. And of course, some of those are parks, statues, or roads or bridges. So let's just say that there are 2,000 buildings in GTA 5. And if we divide 114 by 2000 and multiply by 100, we end up with 5.7%, which is actually more than I expected. Of course, it completely depends on what you count as an interior. So it could be 65% or 67%, or even like 4% if you don't count mission interiors. Let's just say 5% so that we can make GTA 5 look worse than it is. Then RDR2. And I actually had to count all of these by myself. There is a file in the game called interiors.meta, and it has 280 entries. However, this list includes things like train tunnels and mines, and it has duplicates of some interiors. So I didn't trust the file. My criteria for an interior in Red Dead Redemption 2 was that 1. It had a door, so basically any barns that don't have main doors or like open sheds like this don't count. And 2. It either had loot in it, or it had its own minimap when you enter it. At the least, that is the rules I try to follow. I did include mission interiors, like the Brontes and Mayor's mansions, but of course I might have missed some of the interiors, as there are many of them. And I actually made a spreadsheet, so that we can compare the different regions of the RDR2 map. First, the state with the highest amount of interiors is Lemoyne, and the lowest amount of interiors is Ambarino. However, the lowest amount of interiors in relation to total buildings is actually Lemoyne, with 26% interiors. And the highest amount of interiors compared to total buildings is Ambarino, with 90% interiors. So Ambarino has the lowest and highest amount of interiors at the same time, and Lemoyne has both the highest amount of interiors and the lowest amount of interiors at the same time. And for the rest, West Elizabeth, New Austin and New Hanover, the interiors are in between 40 to 50% interiors compared to the amount of buildings. I also calculated the amount of interiors in the 3 major cities, which are Annesburg, Blackwater and St. Denis. Annesburg surprisingly has only 5 interiors with 32 total buildings, and this number is massively inflated by the small houses, which there are 15 to 20 of. But still, Annesburg has 16% interiors. Then Blackwater, which has 20% interiors, with 10 interiors and 49 buildings in total. On the main streets of Blackwater, I actually counted buildings building by building. So if a building had gaps like this around it, I counted it as its own building, even if several buildings like this have been combined into one building on the minimap. However, for St. Denis, I didn't do the same thing. I did go around St. Denis and checked out most of the things and found a few buildings that actually aren't on the map. But I did count a total of 139 buildings in St. Denis, of which 20 had interiors, and this brings Saint Denis to only 14.4% interiors, which is the lowest on the entire map. Then, what if we exclude the big cities? New Hanover increases to 56%. West Elizabeth increases to 60% if we exclude Blackwater, and Lemoyne increases from 26% to 44% by excluding Saint Denis, which isn't a surprise. Still, Kaligahala and Prefect Manor are bringing this number down significantly. Largas is the settlement with the least enterable interiors, with 0 interiors and 4 buildings, and Coulter is the settlement with most interiors, with 4 interiors and 4 buildings which could have interiors. So I'm excluding building ruins. In total, Red Dead Redemption 2 has 195 interiors and 522 buildings which could have interiors, which gives us a ratio of 37.4%. And if we exclude the major cities, we end up with 53%. 200 interiors is actually lower than I thought for Red Dead Redemption 2. And we can see that cities clearly have less interiors in relation to the total amount of buildings. And of course, GTA 6 will have cities and much more buildings. So can GTA 6 even compete with RDR2? There are a few issues trying to determine how many buildings or interiors GTA 6 has, as currently we don't really have access to the map, and we only have the leaks from 2022, 2 trailers and some screenshots, and in them Rockstar is trying to keep things hidden on purpose. There are several interiors that could very well be parallax interiors, so basically a 2D image which looks like an actual room. Or all of those assumed parallax interiors could be real interiors. And of course, there's the question if all of these rooms in apartment buildings like this are enterable. Take-Two has patented a technology which they could use to procedurally generate the interiors of these buildings, like what props and furniture goes into the rooms. As most of the rooms have same floor plans, so the process would be very easy to automate. There's a lot of videos on these patents, I'm not gonna dive deep here. And then of course the rumors that the game will have hundreds of enterable buildings. Game role source, who knew the last names of Lucia and Jason before Trailer 2, stated that there would be 700 interiors. And honestly, this is a realistic number, as I did some counting, and the current amount of confirmed interiors in GTA 6 from the leaks and the trailers is 75, which is a lot for a game of which we have probably seen only 1/3 of, and only like 10% from close up. That 75 is only from close to camera locations. We can tell if a building 100 meters away has an interior, so even the mapped areas of the map can still have hundreds of more interiors. If we compare it to Red Dead Redemption 2, 700 is 3 times more than in that game, which is honestly a realistic number. 700 is like a very realistic number, like a low end for the amount of buildings in GTA 6. In my personal opinion, if we get lucky and we get a higher percentage of interiors than in Red Dead Redemption 2, so more than 35% or something, we might get somewhere in between 1,000 and 1,500 interiors, which I know is a crazy number, but if we compare to the amount of interiors in Red Dead Redemption 2, it is very possible. However, there is a slight problem, as Vice City has a lot of buildings, and as we saw from RDR2, Rockstar has a smaller ratio of interiors in bigger cities. But even if like 1/10 of the buildings in Vice City has interiors, that would mean that Vice City would still have hundreds of interiors. And of course, all 3 of the suburban buildings we have seen have had interiors, so we can assume that more sparsely populated areas have more interiors. As we can also see in Port Kelhon, as there it seems like at least half of the buildings have some kind of interiors, or even more, as again we haven't seen most of the area and haven't been able to verify all of the interiors. But basically what I'm saying, according to Red Dead Redemption 2, the rural areas of GTA 6 could have way more interiors than the cities themselves. And we probably are getting the 700 interiors which has been rumored to be there. At least 700. And I think that's everything important about interiors. Thank you for watching, subscribe, like the video, and share it to the people who need to see it. And comment if I missed something important. Thank you.